The holographic star map cast an eerie blue glow across the faces of the Daylon Strategic Council. The vast war room aboard the ethereal space station hummed with anticipation as Duke Cravath, the newly appointed commander of the Great Descent Armada, strode confidently toward the center of the chamber. His ceremonial armor, adorned with the emblems of 17 conquered star systems, gleamed under the artificial light. "Esteemed members of the Strategic Council," Cravath began, his voice resonating through the cavernous space. "The Emperor himself has entrusted me with the subjugation of the Corvana system, a task I intend to complete with efficiency and precision." Admiral Val Lees, a battle-hardened veteran of the Lost Horizons campaign, raised an eyebrow. "The Corvana system was deemed suitable for colonization last cycle. Have there been developments necessitating military intervention?" Cravath smiled, revealing rows of perfectly aligned teeth, a cosmetic enhancement popular among the Daylon elite. "Not at all, Admiral. In fact, I'm here to propose an alternative target." With a dramatic flourish, he manipulated the holographic display, zooming out from Corvana and redirecting the Council's attention to a small, unassuming blue-green planet in an unremarkable solar system. "This, my esteemed colleagues, is our true opportunity." "Earth?" Commander Keone asked, her voice tinged with surprise. As Cravath's closest advisor, she rarely questioned his decisions publicly. "It's outside our designated expansion zone. Precisely why it presents such an opportunity," Cravath replied smoothly. "It remains unconquered because no one has recognized its potential. The planet has abundant resources, diverse biospheres, and, according to preliminary scans, a dominant species that has achieved basic industrialization but lacks unified planetary defense systems." The Strategic Council murmured amongst themselves, a mix of interest and skepticism evident in their expressions. Cravath's reputation as the supreme strategic mind had earned him considerable influence, but this was a significant deviation from the carefully planned expansion of the Daylon Empire. "What intelligence do we have on this Earth?" asked General Errol, the head of reconnaissance. Cravath gestured to an aide, who promptly delivered a thin data tablet. "The Intergalactic Exploration Bureau compiled this report several cycles ago. I discovered it in our archives, mysteriously overlooked until now." Keone took the tablet, her eyes widening as she read the label. "Earth, Class 15 Deathworld, Extreme Hazard," she said aloud, looking up with concern. "Duke Cravath, this classification suggests—" "A bureaucratic exaggeration," Cravath interrupted dismissively, waving his hand. "I've reviewed the highlights. Yes, the planet has some meteorological peculiarities and diverse fauna, but nothing the Great Descent Armada cannot handle." He deliberately omitted that he had merely skimmed the executive summary, considering the detailed warnings beneath it to be administrative overcaution. "With all due respect," Keone persisted, scrolling through the report, "Class 15 is the highest Deathworld designation in our records. Perhaps we should conduct more thorough—" "Commander Keone," Cravath cut in, his tone hardening slightly. "I appreciate your caution, but caution does not win wars or expand empires. The Emperor expects results, not hesitation." He turned to address the entire council. "I've already begun mobilizing the Armada. We depart for Earth in 3 cycles." Admiral Val Lees stroked his ceremonial beard thoughtfully. "You mentioned a dominant species. What do we know of them?" "Humans," Cravath replied, projecting images of Earth's inhabitants onto the holographic display. "Bipedal mammals with no natural defenses, no claws, minimal physical strength compared to our warriors, and absolutely no resistance to our neural disruptors. They call themselves the apex predators of their world, which speaks to the limited threat their ecosystem poses." The images shifted to showcase human cities, transportation systems, and primitive weaponry. Their most advanced weapons rely on chemical propellants and crude nuclear fission, nothing that could penetrate our shield arrays. And their political structure? General Errol inquired. Fragmented, Cravath answered with a triumphant smile. Hundreds of separate political entities with ongoing conflicts and minimal cooperation. They'll be unable to mount a unified response. He paused for effect. This will be the easiest conquest in recent memory. A simple show of force, followed by immediate capitulation. As the meeting concluded and the council members filed out, Commander Keone lingered, the data tablet still in her hand. Sir, she said quietly when they were alone, I really think you should review the complete report. The extreme hazard designation isn't given lightly. Cravath's expression softened slightly. Keone had been with him since his first command, and he valued her loyalty, if not always her advice. Your concern is noted, Commander. But I've led 17 successful planetary subjugations. Earth will be no different. He took the tablet from her hands and set it aside without looking at it. Now, shall we prepare to make history? Keone nodded reluctantly. But as she followed Cravath out of the war room, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were overlooking something critical. The ominous label, Class 15 Deathworld, lingered in her mind like a warning siren. 3 cycles later, as promised. The Great Descent Armada departed from the Ethereal Station with considerable fanfare. The flagship, Celestial Brilliance, led a formation of over 200 warships, dropships, and support vessels, all equipped with the latest Dalan technology. Aboard the flagship's command deck, Duke Cravath hosted an elaborate demonstration for the Strategic Council members who had chosen to witness the conquest firsthand. Behold, he announced, gesturing toward a holographic display showcasing the Armada's weaponry. Multi-frequency plasma cannons capable of vaporizing entire cities. Autonomous battle drones programmed with 10,000 years of Dalan military strategy. And neural disruptors that can incapacitate organic life forms without damaging infrastructure. Admiral Vallis nodded appreciatively. Impressive. Though I must ask, have you equipped the troops with specialized survival kits? Deathworld environments often require. Standard environmental protection will be more than sufficient, Cravath assured him. Our preliminary analysis suggests Earth's atmosphere is breathable, its gravity manageable, and its temperatures within our tolerable range. And what of the meteorological peculiarities you mentioned? Commander Keone asked. Nothing our technology cannot handle, Cravath replied confidently. Any storm can be dispersed by our atmospheric disruptors. The journey to Earth took several weeks, during which Cravath immersed himself in strategic planning, rather than reviewing the detailed warnings in the Intergalactic Exploration Bureau's report. When questioned by his officers about specific preparations for Earth's conditions, he consistently referenced his previous conquests as proof that standard protocols would suffice. As the Armada approached Earth's solar system, excitement rippled through the fleet. For many junior officers, this would be their first conquest, a guaranteed advancement in rank once the primitive humans surrendered. Entering the outer reaches of the target solar system, announced the navigation officer. Estimated arrival at Earth orbit in 3 standard days. Cravath nodded with satisfaction. Begin preparations for the initial shock and awe display. I want the plasma arrays charged and ready the moment we achieve orbit. The first indication that Earth might not conform to Cravath's expectations came as the Armada approached the planet. The Celestial Brilliance's sensors began registering unusual electromagnetic activity in Earth's atmosphere. Sir, we're detecting powerful magnetic field fluctuations, reported the sensor operator. It's interfering with our long-range communications. Compensate, Cravath ordered dismissively. Adjust the frequency bands. We've tried, sir, the operator replied. The fluctuations are erratic, unpredictable. Our algorithms can't establish a pattern to counteract them. Before Cravath could respond, the ship shuddered violently. Emergency lights flashed across the command deck. "What was that?" Cravath demanded, gripping his command chair to steady himself. "We've encountered a plasma burst from the star," the tactical officer reported. "It appears to be interacting with the planet's magnetic field in ways our sensors didn't predict." "Impossible," Cravath muttered. "Our stellar analysis—" "Sir," interrupted Commander Keone, "the report mentioned this. Earth's star is unusually active for its type, and the planet's magnetic field creates complex interactions that can disable unshielded electronics." Cravath frowned. "Then shield our electronics. This is a minor inconvenience, not a crisis." As the Armada pressed forward, more minor inconveniences accumulated. 3 support vessels reported complete systems failures after passing through particularly dense plasma streams. Communication with the fleet became increasingly erratic as Earth's magnetic field interfered with their quantum entanglement relays. When they finally achieved orbit around Earth, Cravath ordered an immediate deployment of surveillance drones to gather updated intelligence before the invasion began. "Launch reconnaissance pattern Alpha," he commanded. "I want detailed scans of all major population centers and military installations." The drones descended into Earth's atmosphere, their sleek forms designed to remain undetectable to primitive radar systems. However, of the 50 drones dispatched, only 23 maintained communication links with the flagship. "Status report," Cravath demanded, when less than half the expected data streams appeared on the command deck's main display. General Errol, who had joined the expedition as head of reconnaissance, looked troubled. "Sir, we've lost contact with more than half the drones. The survivors are sending concerning footage." The display showed images of the drones encountering violent atmospheric disturbances. One video feed captured a drone being struck by a bolt of lightning, its advanced alloys melting instantly under the electrical discharge. "Lightning?" Cravath exclaimed incredulously. "You're telling me our state-of-the-art reconnaissance drones are being destroyed by simple electrical storms?" "Not simple storms, sir," Errol corrected. "According to the data, Earth experiences lightning strikes of unusual intensity and frequency. Some regions receive thousands of strikes per day." Another video feed showed a drone descending toward an ocean when suddenly massive waves engulfed it, shorting out its propulsion system and sending it plummeting into the depths. Moments later, the feed went dark as something large and toothy crashed into the camera. "What was that?" asked Admiral Vallis, leaning forward with interest. "Some sort of aquatic predator," Errol replied. "Apparently, Earth's oceans contain numerous large carnivorous species." Cravath waved these concerns aside. "Ocean predators won't affect our land invasion. And as for the lightning, we'll simply adjust our approach vectors to avoid storm systems." "That may be difficult, sir," Errol said hesitantly. "Earth appears to have extremely dynamic weather patterns. Storms form and dissipate with remarkable speed, often defying our predictive models." For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Cravath's face, but he quickly suppressed it. "Proceed with the invasion plan. Prepare a dropship for the initial contact team. Commander Keone, select 3 of our best tactical operatives for this mission." "Sir," Keone replied, "given the environmental hazards we're observing, perhaps we should equip them with the Class 15 survival kits?" Cravath hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "If it will ease your concerns, Commander. But I still maintain these precautions are excessive." The initial contact team, 3 elite Dalan soldiers equipped with the Empire's most advanced battlesuits, departed in a stealth dropship, targeting a small coastal settlement that satellite imagery suggested was relatively isolated from major population centers. Their mission was simple: demonstrate overwhelming technological superiority, demand immediate surrender from local authorities, and establish a beachhead for the main invasion force. The dropship descended through Earth's atmosphere without incident, avoiding the storm systems that rolled across the planet's surface. It landed in a clearing near the settlement, which intelligence had identified as Porto Stormalis, a fishing village on Earth's southeastern coast. Commencing initial contact, reported Strike Leader Vex, the team's commander, as they disembarked. Atmosphere composition is within tolerable parameters. Gravity slightly higher than fleet standard, but suit compensators are adjusting. Cravath watched the feed from the command deck, a satisfied smile on his face. You see? No problems whatsoever. These humans will be kneeling before us within hours. The three soldiers advanced toward the village, their plasma rifles at the ready. They had expected panic upon their arrival, screaming locals fleeing at the sight of alien invaders in advanced battle armor. Instead, they encountered a small group of humans who appeared to be setting up decorations in the village square. Curious, Vex commented. They don't seem alarmed by our presence. They will be, Cravath said confidently. Activate the translator and deliver the surrender demand. Vex approached the humans, his suit's external speakers amplifying his voice. The translation matrix converted his words into the local language. People of Earth, we are representatives of the Daelan Empire, the most powerful civilization in the known galaxy. Your planet is now under our control. Surrender immediately or face annihilation. The humans paused in their work, exchanging glances. Then, to the astonishment of the Daelan soldiers, an elderly female human approached them with a warm smile. Well, aren't you just the most exciting thing to happen to our little village in years? She exclaimed. You must be here for the Harvest Festival. Perfect timing. I'm Leora, but everyone calls me Grandma Leora. You look parched after your journey. Come, I've just made fresh tea. It's made fresh. The soldiers stood frozen in confusion. This was not how conquest was supposed to proceed. I don't think they understand, Vex said uncertainly. Let me try again. He adjusted his translator settings and repeated the surrender demand, this time with added menace in his tone. Grandma Leora listened patiently, then laughed. Oh, you're doing one of those theatrical performances. How wonderful. We love a good show during the festival. The costumes are remarkable, so realistic. She turned to the other villagers. Everyone, our visitors have prepared a special performance for the festival. The villagers applauded enthusiastically, completely misinterpreting the invasion as some form of entertainment. On the command deck, Cravath watched in disbelief. What is happening? He demanded. Why aren't they trembling in fear? Sir, Keone said carefully, I believe they think our soldiers are performers, entertainers for their local celebration. This is absurd, Cravath muttered. Vex, demonstrate your weapons. Show them we're not there to entertain. Vex aimed his plasma rifle at an unoccupied wooden structure and fired. The building erupted in bright blue flames, quickly reduced to ashes. Surely now the humans would understand the threat they faced. Instead, the villagers burst into applause once more. Spectacular effects, exclaimed one man. How did you make it look so real? Wonderful pyrotechnics, added another. Better than last year's fireworks display. Grandma Leora approached Vex again, seemingly unperturbed by the destruction. That was impressive, dear. But that was Old Man Pietro's storage shed, and he's going to be quite upset. Never mind, though. Accidents happen during festivals. Now, about that tea. Before the bewildered soldiers could respond, the sky darkened suddenly. Looking up, they saw massive storm clouds gathering with unnatural speed. Weather system approaching, reported the dropship pilot. Recommend immediate return to the vessel. Nonsense, Cravath replied from the flagship. Our battlesuits can withstand far worse than a little rain. As if in direct challenge to his dismissal, a blinding flash of lightning struck mere meters from the soldiers, followed by a deafening crack of thunder. The team's sensors went haywire, their communication systems crackling with static. Storm intensity exceeding safety parameters, Vex reported, his voice breaking up over the connection. Request permission to retreat to the dropship. Before Cravath could respond, Grandma Leora was ushering the soldiers toward a nearby building. "Quickly, dears. You don't want to be caught in a Stormali special. Our lightning strikes have been known to melt metal, and those fancy costumes of yours look quite conductive." To Cravath's mounting frustration, the soldiers allowed themselves to be led to shelter, effectively becoming guests rather than conquerors. The feed from their helmet cameras showed them entering a warm, wooden structure filled with more villagers. The sign above the door read "Fisherman's Bar." "Welcome, welcome," called out a man behind a long wooden counter. "I'm Captain Santos, though I haven't sailed in years. Any friend of Grandma Leora is a friend of ours. What'll you have? First rounds on the house for festival performers." "This is unacceptable," Cravath fumed on the command deck. "Order them to establish dominance immediately." But the storm outside had intensified to the point where the soldiers' communications were completely severed from the fleet. The last transmission from Vex indicated that the dropship had been damaged by lightning, stranding the team in the village until repairs could be made. "Sir," said Admiral Val Liss, who had been quietly observing the situation, "perhaps we should consider a different approach. The Class 15 designation seems increasingly justified." Cravath paced the command deck, his earlier confidence giving way to irritation. "It's just a storm and some confused locals. This changes nothing." He turned to his tactical officer. "Prepare the main invasion force. We'll deploy as soon as these weather conditions improve." But the storm didn't improve. In fact, it grew worse, expanding to encompass a significant portion of the coastline. Additional reconnaissance drones sent to assess the situation returned increasingly alarming data. Wind speeds exceeding design tolerances, electrical discharges powerful enough to penetrate standard Dalen shielding, and precipitation so acidic it was corroding the drone's external sensors. "Sir," the meteorological analyst reported, "this appears to be what the humans call a hurricane, a massive cyclonic storm that can persist for days or even weeks." "Impossible," Cravath muttered. "No natural weather system could be so powerful or enduring." "According to the Earth data," the analyst continued, "these storms are common in certain regions and seasons. In fact, the report indicates that Earth experiences dozens of these events annually." Cravath stared at the tactical display, watching as the storm continued to expand. For the first time, doubt began to creep into his mind. Perhaps there was more to this Class 15 Deathworld designation than bureaucratic caution after all. "Options," he demanded, looking around at his command staff. "We could deploy the atmospheric disruptor," suggested the weapons officer. "It's designed to neutralize hostile environmental conditions." Cravath nodded sharply. "Do it. I want that storm dispersed immediately." The atmospheric disruptor, a satellite-like device capable of manipulating weather patterns through gravitational and electromagnetic interference, was deployed from the flagship. It descended into Earth's upper atmosphere, positioning itself above the hurricane. "Disruptor in position," reported the weapons officer. "Initiating dispersal sequence." The device activated, sending precisely calibrated energy pulses into the storm system. According to all Dalen meteorological science, the hurricane should have begun to dissipate immediately. Instead, the storm intensified. "Sir, we're detecting a 200% increase in wind velocity," the sensor operator reported, alarm evident in his voice. "The disruptor's energy pulses are somehow feeding the storm system rather than disrupting it." "That's not possible," Cravath insisted. "Check your readings." Readings confirmed. "Sir, the storm it's growing stronger and changing direction. It's moving toward our orbital position." On the main display, they watched in disbelief as the hurricane, now nearly doubled in size, began generating electrical discharges that reached far higher into the atmosphere than should have been physically possible. "The disruptor is taking damage," reported the weapons officer. "Its systems are failing." Before Cravath could issue new orders, a massive lightning bolt struck the device, overloading its circuits and triggering a catastrophic failure. The explosion was visible from the command deck, a bright flash in Earth's upper atmosphere, followed by debris scattering across the planet's magnetic field. A stunned silence fell over the command deck. Cravath stared at the display, struggling to comprehend how his supposedly perfect invasion had gone so disastrously wrong in just a few hours. "Sir," Commander Keone said quietly, "I believe it's time we reviewed the full report on Earth's classification as a Class 15 Deathworld." This time, Cravath didn't argue. "Bring it up on the main display." The report, when displayed in its entirety, painted a picture far more alarming than Cravath had anticipated. Earth wasn't just a planet with some meteorological peculiarities and diverse fauna. It was a perfect storm of environmental hazards that had evolved over billions of years. The oceans contained corrosive salt that could deteriorate advanced alloys in mere days. The atmosphere was filled with moisture that could short-circuit unprotected electronics. The magnetic field, coupled with the unusually active star, created electromagnetic conditions that interfered with nearly all Dalan technology. But perhaps most concerning were the sections on Earth's dominant species, humans. Far from being the easily cowed primitives Cravath had imagined, humans were described as irrationally adaptive, pathologically resilient, and, most worryingly, psychologically incomprehensible by standard Dalan metrics. According to this, Admiral Val-Lee said, reading a particular passage, "Humans routinely engage in recreational activities that risk permanent injury or death. They deliberately consume substances that cause pain or altered mental states. They willingly expose themselves to extreme environmental conditions for fun." "That can't be accurate," Cravath protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we've re-established contact with the initial contact team." "Put them through," Cravath ordered, grateful for the distraction from the increasingly disturbing report. "Strike leader." Vex's voice came through, punctuated by background noise that sounded like music and laughter. "Command, this is Vex. Situation is unusual." "Report your status," Cravath demanded. "We're currently participating in what the locals call a pepper-eating contest," Vex replied. His voice strained. "The humans consume these plant capsules that contain a chemical irritant. It causes extreme oral pain, yet they consider it entertainment." "Why are you participating in such nonsense?" Cravath asked incredulously. "You're supposed to be conquering them." "Sir, with respect, our attempts at intimidation have been consistently misinterpreted. When we demonstrated our weapons again, they incorporated the plasma discharge into their festival decorations. When we revealed our true identity as alien invaders, they assumed we were part of an elaborate costume competition and awarded us first prize." In the background, Cravath could hear a human voice shouting encouragement. "Come on, spaceman. One more Carolina Reaper and you've got second place." "And the storm?" Cravath asked, trying to maintain some semblance of military protocol. "The locals call it Tuesday," Vex replied, a note of hysteria creeping into his voice. "They say it's not even a particularly bad one. Apparently, they experience these weather events regularly and have simply adapted their lifestyle around them." Cravath closed his eyes, struggling to process this information. His perfect invasion was unraveling before it had truly begun. Sir," Commander Keone said, having continued to review the report. "There's something else you should see. The report includes a recommended first contact protocol for Class 15 Deathworlds. It specifically advises against military action, suggesting instead a diplomatic approach with emphasis on cultural exchange and trade." "Diplomatic approach," Cravath repeated, the concept so foreign to his conquest-oriented mindset that he could barely comprehend it. "You mean, ask permission to visit their planet?" "Essentially, yes," Keone confirmed. The report indicates that direct confrontation with Class 15 inhabitants typically results in, well, exactly what we're experiencing now. Cravath stared at the tactical display, watching as the hurricane that had incapacitated his atmospheric disruptor continued to grow. Multiple other storm systems were forming across the planet's surface, as if Earth itself was mounting a defense against their presence. Perhaps, Admiral Val Liss suggested carefully, we should consider a strategic reassessment. Cravath wanted to object, to insist that the conquest proceed as planned, but the evidence before him was becoming impossible to ignore. His perfect invasion strategy had failed to account for one critical factor. Earth wasn't just a planet with primitive inhabitants. It was a complex, hostile environment that had shaped its dominant species into something far more resilient and unpredictable than he had imagined. "Commander Keone," he said finally, "prepare a diplomatic delegation. It seems we need to adjust our approach." The decision to shift from invasion to diplomacy wasn't easy for Cravath to accept. But as reports continued to flood in from the scattered reconnaissance teams, it became increasingly clear that Earth defied conventional conquest strategies. In the northern regions, a team of Daylon scouts had encountered what the locals called snow, frozen precipitation that accumulated to depths sufficient to immobilize their exploration vehicles. In the equatorial zones, temperatures and humidity levels rendered their environmental suits nearly inoperable. And everywhere, Earth's indigenous life forms seemed determined to complicate matters, from microscopic organisms that could penetrate Daylon biological barriers to large avian creatures that deliberately targeted surveillance drones. The seabirds, seagulls, they're called, appear to view our drones as territorial rivals, reported one exasperated reconnaissance officer. They attack in coordinated groups, somehow identifying and targeting vulnerable sensor arrays. Most concerning were the ongoing reports from strike leader Vex and his team in Porto Stormalis. Far from establishing dominance, they had been fully incorporated into the Harvest Festival celebrations. Their attempts to gather intelligence were constantly derailed by locals eager to introduce them to various aspects of human culture, most of which seemed, to Daylon sensibilities, extraordinarily dangerous or uncomfortable. "They've invited us to participate in something called Running with the Bulls next month," Vex reported during his latest check-in. Apparently, it involves fleeing from large, aggressive bovines through narrow streets. They describe it as exhilarating. Cravath, who had retreated to his private quarters to reassess the invasion strategy, felt a headache building, a rare occurrence for a species that had genetically engineered away most physical discomforts centuries ago. The more he learned about Earth and its inhabitants, the more he understood why the Intergalactic Exploration Bureau had classified it as a Class 15 Deathworld. A chime at his door interrupted his brooding. "Enter," he called. Commander Keone stepped inside, carrying yet another data tablet. "Sir, the diplomatic team is assembled and awaiting your instructions." Cravath nodded wearily. "What approach do you recommend, Commander?" "I confess, conventional diplomatic protocols seem inadequate for this situation. The report suggests a cultural exchange approach," Keone replied. "Rather than attempting to assert dominance or negotiate from a position of perceived strength, we should express genuine interest in learning about human customs and social structures." Learning from them, Cravath couldn't keep the incredulity from his voice. "They're centuries behind us technologically." "Yes, sir. But they've developed remarkable adaptations to their high-hazard environment. The report suggests that such adaptations could be valuable to the Empire." Cravath frowned. The notion of learning from a less technologically advanced species challenged everything he had been taught about the Daylon's inherent superiority. And yet, the evidence was undeniable. Despite their primitive technology, humans thrived in conditions that had neutralized much of the Armada's advanced capabilities within hours. "Very well," he conceded. "Prepare a diplomatic vessel. I will lead this, Cultural exchange. Personally. Keone's eyes widened. Sir, are you certain that's wise? The environmental hazards are precisely why I must go. Cravath interrupted. If Earth is indeed as dangerous as the report suggests, then I need to understand these hazards firsthand. The Emperor expects results. Commander, even if those results must come through diplomacy rather than conquest. The diplomatic vessel, a smaller and less militaristic craft than the invasion dropships, descended through Earth's atmosphere the following day. Cravath had insisted on minimal armaments and a civilian appearance, though he still wore his ceremonial armor beneath an outer cloak, a concession to both pride and caution. Accompanying him were Commander Keone, a cultural specialist named Thel, and a small security detail. Their destination was Porto Stormalis, where strike leader Vex and his team had inadvertently established the first contact point. As they approached the landing site, Cravath observed the coastal village through the vessel's viewing ports. It seemed almost deliberately picturesque. Colorful buildings nestled between green hills and a blue ocean, with fishing boats bobbing in a small harbor. Harvest festival decorations adorned the village square, and even from the air, they could see crowds of humans engaged in various celebrations. It doesn't look particularly dangerous, Cravath remarked. Neither does a neutron star until you cross its event horizon, Keone replied dryly. The vessel landed in the same clearing used by the initial contact team. As the entry ramp descended, Cravath was immediately struck by Earth's atmosphere, heavier, more humid, and filled with a bewildering array of scents compared to the sterile environment of Dalan ships. Atmospheric composition is within tolerable parameters, reported the environmental officer, though there are numerous organic compounds present that our filters are still identifying. Those would be flowers, cooking smells, and sea salt. Thel supplied helpfully. According to the report, humans have highly developed olfactory preferences and often cultivate plants and prepare food specifically for their aromatic properties. Before Cravath could respond, a small delegation of humans approached the ship. In the lead was an elderly female, presumably the Grandma Leora mentioned in Vex's reports, flanked by a man in what appeared to be a ceremonial uniform adorned with nautical symbols. "Welcome back, space friends," Leora called out cheerfully. "And you've brought more visitors. How wonderful." The man beside her stepped forward with a formal bow. "Captain Juan Santos, retired, at your service. On behalf of Porto Stormalis, I extend our official welcome to Earth." He grinned broadly. "Though I must say, your colleagues have already made quite an impression at our festival, particularly in the hot pepper contest. Never seen anyone turn that shade of purple before." Cravath straightened to his full height, trying to project the dignified authority expected of a Dalan Duke. "I am Duke Cravath, commander of the Great Descent Armada and representative of the Dalan Empire. We come seeking—" Yes. Your friends explained all about your empire and conquests and such," Grandma Leora interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. "Very impressive, I'm sure. But more importantly, you're just in time for the feast. We've prepared special dishes to welcome our first visitors from beyond the stars." Cravath blinked, momentarily thrown off balance by the casual interruption. In the Dalan Empire, interrupting a duke was punishable by lengthy imprisonment. Yet this elderly human had done so without a hint of trepidation. "Perhaps," Commander Keone suggested quietly, "participating in their feast would be an appropriate cultural exchange activity." Cravath nodded stiffly. "We would be honored to join your celebration." "Excellent!" Captain Santos exclaimed. "Follow us to the Fisherman's Bar. It's the heart of our community, where we gather for all important occasions." As they walked through the village, Cravath observed the humans with newfound curiosity. Despite living on what the Empire classified as one of the most dangerous planets in the known galaxy, They appeared remarkably at ease. Children played in open areas, seemingly unconcerned by the looming storm clouds on the horizon. Adults engaged in various festival activities, many of which appeared to involve significant physical risk, climbing greased poles, engaging in competitive feats of strength, and consuming substances that induced obvious physiological distress. "The human there," Cravath whispered to Thel, pointing discreetly at a man drinking from a small glass containing an amber liquid. "He appears to be in pain, yet continues to consume the substance." "Ah, yes," Thel replied after consulting his data tablet. "That would be whiskey, a fermented grain extract containing ethanol. It causes a burning sensation in the throat and progressively impairs cognitive function. Yet humans consume it recreationally." "Fascinating," Cravath murmured, though disturbing might have been more accurate. The fisherman's bar proved to be a rustic wooden structure filled with the sounds of conversation, laughter, and music. Various preserved marine creatures adorned the walls, alongside what appeared to be implements of maritime survival. The air was thick with the aroma of cooked food, fermented beverages, and the distinctive scent of human bodies. As they entered, strike leader Vex and his team rose from a corner table, offering stiff salutes that seemed oddly formal amidst the casual atmosphere. Cravath noted with shock that they had removed portions of their battle armor and were wearing colorful fabric garlands around their necks. "Sir," Vex greeted him, a strange mix of military discipline and festival relaxation in his demeanor. "Welcome to Earth." Before Cravath could respond, Grandma Leora was ushering them toward a large, central table, laden with an astonishing variety of food items. "Sit, sit," she insisted. "We've prepared a special feast to welcome our visitors from the stars." The diplomatic team was arranged around the table, with Cravath positioned at what was clearly the place of honor beside Captain Santos. Humans crowded around them, their expressions a mix of curiosity, excitement, and, most disconcertingly to Cravath, complete lack of fear. "Before we begin," Captain Santos announced, raising a glass of amber liquid, "a toast to new friendships across the stars." The humans raised their glasses in unison, and after a moment's hesitation, Cravath and his team did the same. The whiskey burned Cravath's throat exactly as Thel had described, yet he found the sensation oddly interesting. Not pleasant, certainly, but intriguing in its intensity. "Now," Grandma Leora declared, "we've prepared Earth delicacies from around the world to give you a taste of our planet's diversity." What followed was, to Cravath's increasingly alarmed realization, a systematic assault on his sensory systems. Each dish presented was more challenging than the last. Seafood preserved in acidic solutions, vegetables soaked in oil and vinegar, meats prepared with chemical compounds that caused his translator to flag them as potentially hazardous. But the true test came when Grandma Leora presented a small plate containing what appeared to be dried, wrinkled red pods. "These," she announced with evident pride, "are Carolina Reaper peppers, currently the hottest chili peppers on Earth. They're a particular specialty of mine." Cravath eyed the innocuous-looking plant matter suspiciously. "Hottest? You mean in temperature?" The humans around the table laughed good-naturedly. No, Captain Santos explained. "Hot as in spicy. They contain a compound called capsaicin that stimulates pain receptors. Quite intensely, in fact." "And you consume these deliberately?" Cravath asked, unable to keep the disbelief from his voice. "Of course," Grandma Leora beamed. "They add wonderful flavor to food, clear the sinuses, and provide a most exhilarating experience." Cravath looked to his team for guidance. Commander Keone raised an eyebrow in what he recognized as a warning, while Thel consulted his data tablet with obvious concern. "Sir," Thel whispered, "according to the database, this particular plant species contains compounds that would register as chemical weapons under Dalen classification. Consumption is, not advised. But Cravath was acutely aware of the humans watching him expectantly. He had come to establish diplomatic relations, to understand these bizarre creatures who thrived on a Class 15 Deathworld. If they routinely consumed such substances, surely he, a genetically enhanced Dalen Duke, could manage the experience. "I would be honored to try this specialty," he declared, reaching for one of the dried peppers. The room fell silent as he placed it in his mouth and bit down. For a brief moment, there was only a mild, slightly sweet flavor. Then, as the capsaicin reached his pain receptors, Cravath experienced what could only be described as a supernova erupting inside his mouth. His eyes widened in shock. His respiratory system seized. His carefully engineered neurology, designed to withstand extreme combat conditions, sent emergency signals to his brain, indicating critical system failure. Through watering eyes, he saw the humans watching him, with expressions ranging from concern to barely suppressed amusement. Strike Leader Vex and his team looked on in horror, having presumably experienced this delicacy themselves. "Water!" Cravath managed to gasp, reaching for his glass. "Oh no, dear," Grandma Leora said, swiftly removing the water. "That'll only make it worse. Try this instead." She handed him a glass of white liquid. "Milk. It binds to the capsaicin." Cravath drank desperately, experiencing mild relief as the burning sensation marginally decreased. His mind raced, trying to comprehend how humans could voluntarily subject themselves to such torture, and why they would offer it to diplomatic visitors. "Excellent tolerance," Captain Santos declared, clapping Cravath on the back. "Most first-timers can't even speak after a whole reaper. You're made of stern stuff, Duke Cravath." Gradually, the burning subsided to a manageable level, though Cravath suspected his taste receptors would never function quite the same again. As he regained his composure, he noticed something unexpected. The humans were regarding him with increased respect, as if his willingness to endure their culinary torture test had somehow elevated his status. "Now," Captain Santos continued, seemingly oblivious to Cravath's lingering distress, "shall we discuss this alliance your people are proposing? I understand you initially planned a more forceful approach to Earth?" Cravath straightened, trying to reclaim some dignity. "That was a miscalculation. We failed to properly evaluate Earth's classification as a Class 15 Deathworld." The captain nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, your officer Vex explained this classification system. Quite flattering, really, to be considered the most dangerous planet in your database." "You take pride in this designation?" Cravath asked incredulously. "Of course," Captain Santos laughed. "Humans have always prided themselves on overcoming adversity. Our entire history is one of surviving against the odds, adapting to hostile environments, turning dangers into opportunities. But the risks you take, they seem unnecessary." Cravath pressed, genuinely trying to understand. The recreational consumption of pain-inducing substances, the deliberate exposure to dangerous weather conditions, activities like running with the bulls. "Ah, but that's where you misunderstand us," Captain Santos replied, his expression growing more serious. "It's precisely because we live on a dangerous world that we embrace risk. We don't just survive here. We celebrate our survival." Grandma Leora nodded in agreement. "Every storm weathered, every challenge overcome, these things remind us that we're alive, that we're resilient. The pepper burns, yes, but when the burn fades, there's a kind of euphoria that follows." Cravath considered this perspective, so alien to the Dalen mindset of minimizing risk and maximizing efficiency. Could it be that the very hostility of Earth had shaped its inhabitants into something uniquely resilient? That, instead of being crushed by their dangerous environment, humans had somehow incorporated that danger into their cultural identity? The conversation continued late into the night, with the humans sharing stories of Earth's many hazards, from towering waves that surfers deliberately rode for amusement, to massive ice-covered mountains that climbers scaled for no reason other than because they're there. Each tale left Cravath more astonished than the last, his understanding of this strange species gradually shifting from dismissive superiority to reluctant admiration. When thunder shook the building, rattling glasses and momentarily cutting power, the humans merely cheered and continued their festivities by candlelight. The storm that would have sent Daylon citizens scurrying for reinforced shelters was, to these remarkable creatures, simply another element of their celebration. As the night drew to a close, Captain Santos raised his glass for a final toast. To new friends from distant stars, may we learn from each other and grow stronger together. The humans cheered enthusiastically, and Cravath found himself raising his glass as well, the burning sensation of the whiskey now almost pleasant in its familiarity. Later, as the diplomatic team prepared to return to their vessel, Grandma Leora approached Cravath with a small wooden box. "A parting gift," she said, pressing it into his hands. "Dried peppers from my garden and a special blend of our strongest coffee. To remember us by." Cravath accepted the gift with genuine gratitude, understanding now that it represented not a culinary assault, but a symbol of respect, an acknowledgement that he had shared in their dangerous pleasures and emerged stronger for the experience. Back aboard the Celestial Brilliance, Cravath called an emergency meeting of his command staff. The Great Hall, designed to intimidate with its stark military aesthetics, now seemed oddly sterile after the warm chaos of the Fisherman's Bar. "Our strategy regarding Earth must change," he announced without preamble. "Conventional conquest is not merely impractical. It is impossible." Admiral Val Liss raised an eyebrow. "Because of their technological defenses." "No," Cravath replied. "Because of their psychological makeup. These humans don't fear the very things that should terrify them. They deliberately seek out danger, pain, and discomfort, not from necessity but from choice." He activated the holographic display, showing footage from Porto Stormalis, humans laughing in a violent thunderstorm, consuming capsaicin-laden foods with evident delight, engaging in physically punishing competitions for no apparent reward. "How do you conquer a species that treats life-threatening situations as entertainment?" Cravath asked. "How do you intimidate people who voluntarily consume chemical weapons for pleasure?" The command staff exchanged uncomfortable glances, the implications settling over them like a heavy fog. "So what do you propose, sir?" Commander Keone asked. Cravath took a deep breath. "I am recommending to the Emperor that Earth be reclassified as a class Deathworld, the designation reserved for planets whose hazards exceed rational categorization. Furthermore, I suggest we establish diplomatic relations rather than attempting conquest." A murmur ran through the assembled officers. Such a recommendation was unprecedented in Daylon military history. The humans have expressed interest in cultural and technological exchange. Cravath continued. They offer knowledge of survival techniques in extreme environments, something that could benefit our exploration of other high-hazard worlds. "And what do we offer in return?" Admiral Val Liss asked. Cravath smiled slightly. "Apparently, they're quite eager to learn about interstellar travel. Captain Santos suggested a space tourism arrangement might be particularly appealing to his people." "Tourism," repeated the Admiral incredulously. "They want to visit other planets. For recreation?" "Indeed," Cravath confirmed. "It seems the opportunity to experience new dangers is highly valued in their culture." Over the following days, as the diplomatic team continued their interactions with Porto Stormalis and established contact with other human settlements, Cravath's perspective on Earth and its inhabitants underwent a profound transformation. What he had initially dismissed as a primitive world ripe for conquest had revealed itself to be something far more complex, a crucible of evolution that had forged a species uniquely adapted to thrive in conditions that most galactic civilizations would consider uninhabitable. The Dalan Empire had expanded across the stars by identifying and exploiting weaknesses. But how did one exploit a weakness in a species that transformed weaknesses into strengths? That faced natural disasters with celebration rather than fear? That deliberately sought out pain and danger as means of affirming their existence? 1 week after their initial diplomatic contact, Cravath transmitted his final report to the Dalan Emperor. It contained a detailed analysis of Earth's environmental hazards, an assessment of human psychological patterns, and a strong recommendation against military action. Instead, he proposed an unprecedented alliance, one in which the Dalan would gain insights into resilience and adaptation, while offering humans controlled access to the stars they so eagerly wished to explore. The village of Porto Stormalis hosted a farewell ceremony for the diplomatic team, complete with another feast, featuring significantly milder cuisine at Cravath's polite request, and displays of local culture. As Cravath prepared to depart, Captain Santos approached him with a knowing smile. "You came to conquer us, didn't you?" the retired sailor asked quietly. "Before all this diplomacy business?" Cravath hesitated, then nodded. There seemed little point in denying it now. "We did. It was a significant miscalculation." Captain Santos laughed heartily. "Don't feel too bad. You're hardly the first to underestimate what humans can endure. Our history is filled with would-be conquerors who didn't understand what they were facing. Your planet is remarkable," Cravath admitted. "In all my expeditions, I've never encountered a world so seemingly determined to eliminate its inhabitants, or inhabitants so determined to embrace that challenge." "Earth isn't trying to kill us," Santos replied with a wink. "She's just making sure we stay interesting. Nothing builds character like a good storm or a close call with a predator." As the diplomatic vessel lifted off from Porto Stormalis for the final time, Cravath watched the coastal village recede from view. The harvest festival was concluding, but another celebration, something called a hurricane party, was already being prepared as the next massive storm system approached the coast. "Remarkable creatures," he murmured, more to himself than to Commander Keone, who stood beside him at the viewing port. "Living on the most dangerous planet we've ever encountered, and they've turned that danger into a source of joy." "Perhaps that's why they've survived," Keone suggested. "By embracing their world's hazards, rather than merely defending against them." Cravath nodded thoughtfully. "A lesson for the Empire, perhaps. We've conquered hundreds of worlds. Yet how many have we truly understood?" As the Great Descent Armada prepared to depart Earth's solar system, Cravath found himself in his private quarters, examining the wooden box Grandma Leora had given him. Inside were the dried peppers, small, wrinkled things that had caused him such extraordinary pain, and a packet of dark, aromatic coffee beans. With careful deliberation, he selected one of the smallest peppers and placed it on his tongue. The burning sensation erupted immediately, but this time he was prepared. Instead of fighting against the pain, he allowed himself to experience it fully, to note the complex flavors beneath the fire, to observe his body's reactions with detached curiosity. And as the burn gradually subsided, he understood what Grandma Leora had meant. There was indeed a kind of euphoria that followed, a heightened awareness, a sense of having endured something significant and emerged stronger. Perhaps, Cravath reflected as he gazed out at the blue-green planet below. This was the true secret of Earth's Class 15 designation. Not merely the physical hazards, the storms, predators, and extreme conditions, but the psychological impact of evolving in such an environment. Humans hadn't just survived their Deathworld, they had embraced it, incorporated its dangers into their identity, learned to find joy in the very things that should have destroyed them. As the Armada departed Earth's orbit, setting course for Dalan space, Cravath made a personal notation in his commander's log. Earth, Class Deathworld. recommend extreme caution in all interactions. Not because humans are dangerous, though they certainly are, but because they may change how we see ourselves. After all, what is more dangerous than a new perspective? In the ships behind the celestial brilliance, rumors spread among the Daylon troops. Their commander, the great Duke Cravath, had returned from Earth with strange new habits. He consumed burning substances with his meals. He stood on the observation deck during simulated lightning storms. And sometimes, in the quiet hours when most of the crew was resting, he could be heard listening to recordings of Earth's thunderstorms, a small smile on his face as the artificial thunder shook the walls. The conquest that never was had conquered the conqueror in ways no one could have predicted. And across the vast distances of space, Earth continued its wild orbit around its unusually active star, its oceans rising and falling, its storms raging and subsiding, its inhabitants laughing in the face of dangers that would terrify most galactic citizens. Class 15 Deathworld indeed, but also, perhaps, the most vibrantly alive planet in the known universe.